I am Halli Casser-Jayne, and welcome to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, where along with my partner in politics, veteran White House correspondent Matthew Cooper, we slice and dice all things politics, and some days, Donald Trump too. On this episode of the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, COVID-19, federal troops in American cities, Joe Biden ahead by 6 in Florida. And that's just the half of it, because besides our weekly take on all things politics, in our second half hour, we're taking a trip to Haines, Alaska, with the fun, spunky, astute author of BEARS and BALLOTS, an Alaska adventure in small-town politics, Heather Lende. But first, it's Halli and Matt. Here we go. Well, welcome, my friends. Here's where we are this week. We've reached yet another milestone. There are more than 4.5 million cases of COVID-19 in the United States, the largest amount of cases in any country worldwide, more than 145,000 dead. It computes to approximately 1,100 deaths a day, as more than 60,000 Americans contracted the dreaded disease every day. That's 2,600 an hour, Matt, and record hospitalizations nationwide. Here in Florida, some consider the epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic worldwide. Things are, as simply stated as I can put it, a mess. And they're not a lot better in California, Texas, Arizona. In fact, Twirl Girl, the infamous Dr. Burke, has warned of massive spikes coming all over the country. And meanwhile, in Portland, soon to come to Chicago and Albuquerque, New Mexico, Trump's militia has invaded the cities, much to the dismay of their mayors. Welcome to dystopia, Matt. I mean, America. I mean, land of COVID-19. I mean, good morning, Matt. Sigh.
Good morning. Good morning, Halli.
Good. It's that good. Maybe not so good.
It's all going great.
Seriously? This is a mess.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Florida, because you're down there. You live there. What is it like, just, around where you live?
So here's the deal. I am not going out. I'm asthmatic. It's not a good thing for me to get this virus. So my doctor has said, you know what? You can't go out. And I don't want you bringing anybody into your home either, unless they've had a COVID test. Because that's
so
how...
This is really cut into your clubbing.
This is really cut into my life. And in fact, my doctor is working from home. That's how bad it is. He will not even open his office. And so I think that's kind of interesting. How bad...
So you're just getting everything delivered.
No, I'll go stir crazy, so I go to the market, when I have to. Not often, but I did. And I want to tell you, I had you in mind when I went. I was surveilling.
That's good, I think. I don't know.
No, I was surveilling, so I could tell you what I was seeing.
Yeah.
The streets are jammed with cars. The stores are jammed with people. Jammed. As if it's the height of the season.
Panic food buying.
I don't think it's panic food buying. They're in Home Depot. They're in every little, the pool store, this store. They're everywhere. Cars are.
They're just buying lots of things. It's not 20
not
pound
staying
bags
home.
of rice.
They're not staying home. I would say more people are wearing masks because they can't get into the stores without a mask. So therefore more people are wearing masks. But here's what's, I think, incredibly interesting. My neighbors were coming over, not so much anymore, because I think everybody is starting to get like a little scared. But this is like people who are over, 50. So that's the neighbor. All right. But I think the thing that has me most confused here is then there are the people who say, well, I can't not go out. I'm not going to get it. I don't fit in the group. I got to get done what needs to get done. And those are the people who are the spreaders. That's who they are. And there are a lot of them out there. It's not me. It's the other guy. And I believe that is the problem, not only in Florida, but in this entire country. And people have to start understanding, no, it's them. It's sad.
Right.
Yeah. So, so it's pretty scary. And DeSantis, he's getting clobbered by Trump. Trump has hit him twice.
Your governor, who Now, what do you mean he's getting clobbered?
Trump has twice hit him. Trump said on national TV he opened too soon, and then yesterday he hit him again and said maybe more could be done. So Trump has given him a little, but there's something going on here.
So the two had been very tight until now, right?
Yes and no. There's a woman whose name I can't remember, but she got DeSantis elected, and then he immediately got rid of her. She was, I can't think of her name, but she's a Trump crony, and she does all the whatever you have to do to get somebody elected. And he had her fired, and Trump just brought her back. And they're arch enemies, DeSantis and this woman. I'm sorry, guys, I can't remember her name.
She's a political consultant.
Right. So she's back running Trump's stuff right now. However, just as we were going on air, new stat came out on the situation in Florida for Trump, and Biden 50, Trump 44, out from Florida politics and AARP. And it's going to stay and going to get worse because people down here know they're not taking care of the seniors.
Right. I mean, the seniors have been a bright spot for Republicans for a while now in national elections, and they're the most vulnerable now, and they're turning on Trump.
Well, they're turning on Trump because they're dying in droves.
Yeah, except at the villages, right?
No.
The villages.
Yeah, no, the villages death rate's going up. COVID has hit the villages. I think that's going to make an even bigger difference. But you see what's happening here is, the old story about Florida, the further north you go, the further south you are, the more pro-Trumpers.
Right.
Well, that's changing.
The Panhandle was traditionally very southern.
Right. But that's changing. And, you got an influx of people who are moving all over the state now from Northeast. And that does change and also from, Haiti and Puerto Rico. I mean,
we got more Puerto Ricans, right? I mean, so
things are changing.
Corridor,
exactly. Florida isn't what it was even 4 years ago. So anyway, the point being that in that enclave where they used to be mostly are Republican, when you start losing your loved ones to a horrid death, you start to say, wait a minute, what's going on here? So that would account for the 50-44 in Florida. And I'm sorry, it's over if Trump can't win Florida.
Probably, yeah, absolutely.
So
I think very tough.
Yeah. But Donna Shalala, who I mentioned, I think last week, didn't I? I said I wanted to hear
Congresswoman from South Florida.
And she's screaming away, shut down the damn state. Because she was the Health and Human Services lady, and she knows how it goes. And she's saying you can't clean this up no matter what you do.
You got to just go back to break the chain, right?
Yeah, exactly. Now, I will say that I think we're at an 18% positivity rate in South Florida, which is pretty high, to say the least. I think they want it under 5. It's 18. And Miami-Dade County, it's a mess down there. And I have news for you. It's not so wonderful. From going up past Palm Beach now, the hospital here in Martin County is in Jensen. It's starting to pour down rain, so we may get cut off. Jensen Beach is all the hospitals are jammed. I just don't see them shutting down though, and I think that's what Fauci is trying to tell them gently. Y'all need to do. So what happens?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, in lieu of that, hopefully people will really, wear masks, distance, wash up, and do all the things they need to do.
You would hope. I think the numbers have ticked down by like a gazillion % in Florida, in Miami since they did the mask thing. It's performance. It's people staying home because they're too scared to go out, and I think that's
right.
What it is. So, we can't solve it. But I personally think, Matt, shut down the damn country for 1 month, put everything on hold, and start all over. Or it'll be patchwork. And we're already close to August, September. In certain parts of the country, you already start to see flu stuff coming and bubbling, and yikes. All right. And in lieu of all of this, Senate is trying to cobble a new relief package together. sigh again because the Republicans are out there screaming, you know, people are getting more unemployment insurance than if they went to work. They won't go to work if we keep that up. So they want to cut it to $100 a week. How are your food bills up there? Because our food bills have seriously doubled.
Grocery prices are definitely up. Everything else is fairly stable. Of course, tuition keeps going up even
if you're remote.
Yeah, even if it's, all University of Phoenix now. But the Republicans have been, very hesitant about doing another relief bill. I think they're going to do it.
No, I think this morning's was that they've come up with a tentative thing. I just think it's very harsh, and again, it's doing what it does all the time. What they do and what they revealed themselves to be is, they're just hateful little elitist suckers who have no clue what it's like for the real little guy who's out there working. I mean, Marco Rubio this morning was tweeting about, we got to cut the employment, although people will never go back to work. No, Mr. Rubio, people will go back to work when they think it's safe to go back to work.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So that's where he is. Trump's dystopia. We're in it, honey. Should that be the title for the show? Trump's dystopia. Donnie's dystopia. What's the story with these goons going into Portland and Chicago and Albuquerque and...
Well, basically, Trump said a few weeks back when statues were getting pulled down that he was going to protect all the federal monuments around the country and federal facilities. And so what they did is they cobbled together various kinds of law enforcement from Border Patrol and others that are part of the Department of Homeland Security, and basically deployed them to different places to protect federal facilities. So what's happening in Portland, Oregon, where this is most dramatic, is there's been a big attack on the federal courthouse there. And so these troops, for lack of a better word, who are not really wearing identifying uniforms or names or anything, have been driving around in rental cars to keep a lower profile on the streets and, kind of picking people up and for questioning. And so it's all had a very creepy quality, as you've probably seen in these various videos out there, people getting picked up and,
And the mayor of Portland gets tear gas last night.
Yeah, a lot of tear gas. It was a little unclear how much of that was just Portland PD and how much of that was these more shadowy troops. But either way, it's been super creepy. And the acting head of the Department of Homeland Security, a guy named Chad Wolf, has been utterly defiant about this. Like, we don't need permission of the cities to do this because all these cities are saying, hell no, you're not coming here. And he's been like, yeah, we are. So it's totally the opposite of the normal situation where, in the extreme case, a governor will call for the National Guard. This is the feds just saying, hey, we're coming in and we're going to basically do the work of local law enforcement, but in a much creepier way. So, a whole crisis that kind of began with about police abuse and has now been escalated by Team Trump.
Well, what do you really think Trump is up to here, Matthew? Because it isn't to protect federal buildings, because he could care less about federal buildings.
Well,
in my opinion,
this is his idea for a show of strength. That everything in Trump's mind is about who's strong and who's weak, and I'm so strong and I'm strong, strength. We're very strong on statues. It's our history. It's our history. So I think it's just kind of a measure of
Well, I'm going to be
strength.
More conspiracy theories than that. First of all,
you think it's actually a coup, or
let me give you a couple of things. First of all, Tom Ridge. Tell everybody who Tom Ridge is.
Tom Ridge was the first Secretary of Homeland Security in the early 2000s, and he had been the governor of Pennsylvania, and pretty widely respected by Republicans and Democrats, and he was very alarmed by this. It was just, really pretty awful.
And let's put him in context. Back in the day, he was a pretty right-wing kind of guy and vociferous, which is why he, rose to the high ranks. So, but a very measured Tom Ridge has appeared, and he is sounding the alarm. This is not okay. I want to say that my theory on this is, first of all, how Trump keeps tweeting law and order. I think what he really means to be tweeting is law and disorder. This is race baiting. He's going into Democratic run cities that are, just out of control. I'd like to see where the out of control is. He's making them out of control, I can tell you that. When he's picking Hispanic City, Albuquerque, Chicago, the blacks, right? It's almost as if he's working for Putin. Get those militias into, slowly, gently, before even people realize that we will be in every important city in the United States of America. I mean, I've had people say this to me, and I where I would have 3 years ago, 4 years ago, said, what? Now go, there could be some truth to this. This is not okay. I mean, first of all, we're gonna see what the law says about this, because Congress is going to take a look at this. But I can't imagine that unidentified federal troops can just be dispersed to any city in the United States without the permission of the governor or the mayor or whatever. It's so un-American, Matt. Yeah.
Well, I agree it's bad. I don't know if I'm quite sold that it's a Putin.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying.
Operation.
But it is off the. It's not democracy.
Well, I mean, it's it's pure Trump. I mean, it's kind of he's making a bad situation worse. It's a display of just kind of ego and force.
So you see nothing nefarious in it? I mean, it's
no, I see it totally.
Good.
It
wasn't coming across.
I mean, do I think
get outraged? I want you to be outraged.
No, I am outraged. I just,
you know me.
There aren't that many of these Homeland Security troops, unless you want to pull the border patrol.
He's not. Isn't this a conglomeration, Matt? Isn't this like what's the one Coast Guard and
he's kind of borrowing.
ICE.
He's kind of putting together a patchwork of ICE, Customs and Border Patrol and stuff. Yeah, I mean, this is not the same as mobilizing the military. But look, it's awful. It's really bad for these cities. It's bad for the uniformed personnel that he's called up and made them do this stuff. I mean, it's ridiculous.
So I'm just curious as to why there's not more immediate outrage about this. But it's like everything. Nobody gets outraged anymore because they're so numb.
Well, I think we go through this most every week. I think that there is outrage.
No action. That's the word I probably should have used. There's no action on anything. Everybody gets outraged and then there's no action.
Well, I think, people are going people in the cities are protesting it where it's happening. The Democrats are going to take all this to court. They've denounced it.
So back to what I always say about the Democrats, right? Trump breaks the rules and the Democrats play by the rules. You can't win. And they're banking everything on the election. Everything. And if Trump wins the election, we are over as a republic. There will be no turning back. Get out and vote, folks. Sorry, but
yeah, no, I
you agree with me on that. I mean, I think the Dems are making a big mistake as putting it off for 3 months. I think that they really have to holler, scream, yell, rant, rave. And by the way, the good thing about that would be it incentivizes Democrats to get out and vote. Because we know that there is a lack of excitement over Biden. So if they were to open a mouth and play it, at least they would get people excited.
Right.
And I think that's what needs to happen right now. I want to bring something else up here. Liz Cheney versus the Freedom Caucus. Oh, my.
Right.
Here's what I want to say to you about that. Could it be that there is going to be an internal fight between the Cheney clan and the Trump clan? And what a bizarre fight that is.
Yeah. Well, the Phil Mann's getting up there. I don't know how much he's going to get involved in this.
Who? I didn't hear who. Who?
Dick Cheney. I don't know if this is really going to...
You know something about Dick Cheney.
Yeah, I don't know about Dick Cheney.
What do you know about Dick Cheney?
Yeah. It takes too long.
Here's what I was going to say. I think he feels comfortable enough with his daughter, and she's formidable. There's no question. That if he says to her, here's what we need to do to wrench control out of these idiots who are running the Republican Party, even if we get rid of Trump, that he may not want to play that game, but he feels comfortable enough with Liz, who's got his mouth and his ability to, to do it for him. I don't think she just went against Trump twice for no reason. I think she's thinking.
No, I think she's sure. I mean, she has her differences with him. And look, she's not just any congresswoman. She's the number 3 in the Republican Party in the House, representing the state of Wyoming, her father's old seat.
Right.
And,
wasn't he speaker or something?
She had been sticking it to him on Russia and some other things. Now she's...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying to you. I think there's more to this story than people are giving it ink.
No, I agree. I don't know if there's enough we'll see where we're at the day after the election. I don't think there's enough people in the Republican Party willing to buck Trump right now for that to mean very much. But, your boyfriend, Matt Gaetz.
Make me ill.
What did he say? She ought to quit or... Why are you Republican? I'm talking about the right-wing Florida guy who's a total Trump sycophant.
An idiot. And not the smartest thing walking, by the way. He's not. He's daddy's boy. He's a rich kid. His father bought him a seat and who likes to drink and party and do all sorts of crazy things and then is willing to go to bat for Trump in any way, shape, or form. I sent him knee pads, did I tell you?
Oh, jeez.
I did. I literally sent them. Okay. Anyway, I think there's a story here with Miss Cheney, and I keep your eye on the ball here because I think they know what Trump's numbers are looking like. All of them know. Whether they're willing to go public with it or not, they know. And in their own little ways, they're dropping Trump. On the stump, his name's not mentioned as much, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we know that. I guess my point being here is they are preparing for what is about to happen if Trump loses. And there will be an infight. There will be a terrible, terrible fight for control, wrenching control of the party. And Liz comes from the old guard, whether they supported Trump or not. So you heard it here first. On election 2020, I did mention that in Florida, Biden is ahead by 50-44, according to AARP in Florida politics. Biden called Trump the first racist president yesterday or the day before. Oh, my. How's he doing? How do you think Mr. Biden's doing before we talk about Mr. Obama? How do you think Mr. Biden's doing?
Well, I think if the polls are to be believed, he's doing pretty well. I mean, he's, on a path to victory, but he's got a lot of big tests to go, including picking vice presidential nominee and, sealing the deal. So, so far so good, but we'll see where we're at before too long.
Well, I think what's interesting...
on the first racist president, I think their number.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it.
Andrew Johnson was pretty.
Nixon was no charm either. So.
Yeah, I mean,
but he got people's attention, so that was that for him.
He got people's attention.
Yeah, it's the economy stupid. 1.4 million jobless claims again this morning, up from last week at 1.3, and that's like 16 weeks. This has been going on. 50 million claims. It's scary stuff out there, and it's only going to get worse because people aren't going to go to work under these current circumstances. So I don't know. I can't wait to see Trump's spin on the 1.4 versus 1.3. You can be sure next week it's going to be higher. So that'll be really interesting. But as far as I wanted to, Kamala Harris, got nailed because she apparently Botoxed herself into concrete last week, and all I saw when I said it was, you know what? She must know she's about to be on air a lot more than she used to be. I don't know, just thought I'd throw that out as a clue as to what's coming. Could be.
Could be.
We haven't had a could be in weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. So there it is.
It could be Kamala. It could be she's taking Botox. And it could be we'll be seeing even more of her.
Right. Could be. I want to bring Israel up very quickly. And here's the reason I want, because something's happening in Israel that's the opposite of what's happening here. It's a mess over there. They've had to shut down again. Mess. Yeah, they've had to shut down again because COVID, it's such a tiny little country and, 5,000 cases there is like the entire country. So Netanyahu is about to go on trial, I believe, in January. There are all these protests.
Right, long-standing corruption charges.
Right. Trumped up, if you ask me. Right. He is, there's a lot of unrest in Israel. There's a lot of protests against him from the left. It's interesting. It's the opposite of what's happening here. Here, right, it's the right, the standing with Trump and no masks or whatever. And it's the left pushing him to do the opposite in Israel. It's very interesting. It's all messed up. But he does have this.
The left's pushing him to do what opposite?
Okay, so here it's the right don't want to wear masks, and there it's the left who don't want to wear masks.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Okay.
I didn't know that was the case.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
So like your secular Tel Aviv lefties aren't wearing masks?
That's about the way it goes, which makes more sense, by the way, than the right saying we don't want to wear masks. But there's, libertarianism versus socialism, and there you go. So, y'all go.
I thought it was all the West Bank settlers and, ultra-Orthodox.
No. Well, they're protesting,
chanting in close proximity and not wearing masks.
Well, but they're screaming for their rights, and they don't want the government to to force them into going into military service. Yeah. They got all their crap going on there too. But I wanted to bring this up only because Netanyahu now is calling for elections because he thinks they're going to try and get him out once the trial opens, and this is a way for him to secure more.
And he just got a new government after a long struggle, right?
Right. It's interesting. I only bring it up only because I happen to be a fan of his, but I'm a crazy right winger when it comes to the Middle East. But I find it fascinating that he doesn't want to give up power, because I never thought he was in it for the power per se. Not to say that there's not a politician in the world who doesn't enjoy their power, but I always thought that. So I'm fighting with myself. Does he think that if he stays in, he will be the one who will get the annexation and get the West Bank into Israel's hands? And that's what he doesn't want to give up. Anyway, it's fascinating.
Well, that could be it, or he doesn't want to get. He
doesn't want to go to jail.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't want to be like, others who've have gotten prosecuted after they left.
Right. They like to do that. They like to put their former prime ministers in jail.
Yeah, you're more vulnerable when you're the former prime minister.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Trump ought to know that, because hopefully the day that he's at office, they're going to take him and do the same thing, arrest him on the spot and send him to New York and blah.
Yeah, okay. No, I know what you mean. But the other thing out of there is the schools, right?
I'm glad you brought that up.
Feeling that they opened the schools too soon.
Yeah, they are proof.
The kids were spreaders.
The kids turned out to be spreaders. And if you're all wondering what the hell is going to happen if you do open the schools, just look to Israel, because they did it. And they discovered that, yes, 9-year-olds spread the COVID virus and get it.
They don't get sick so much.
They do get it. No, they do get it. They get it. They've had cases.
We had on ventilators.
No, but they don't know what the long-term damage is, because they're discovering that there is all sorts of heart stuff and lung stuff that stays in these kids after they get it, and blood clot crap. And look, this is a virus that nobody understands yet. It's not a time to be messing with anything.
That's a good point.
We need to close down. I'm going to say baseball begins today. That's something nice.
Yes, a semblance of normalcy, but of course empty stadiums and weird cutouts of people in the stands.
Oh boy, did we miss anything? Oh boy, this is all I can tell you is take me out to the ball game.
Right.
You are listening to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts weekly at hallicasserjayne.com and is available wherever you listen to your podcasts. Be sure to find us on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on all your favorite apps. You can find the Halli Casser-Jayne Show on your Alexa device too. Just say the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. Oh, and come play with me on Twitter at the Halli CJ Show. Former Speaker of the House Tip O'Neill once said, all politics is local. And Heather Lende is here to tell you that if you haven't served on a local board or commission, you haven't lived. If you have served and lived through it, she feels your pain and will have you laughing at hers. The New York Times bestselling author has been writing about her hometown, Haines, Alaska, and about what community means since she published If You Lived Here, I'd Know Your Name in 2006. After the 2016 elections and Hillary Clinton's great loss, she was inspired to take a more active role in politics and decided to run for office in Haines. And she won. She tells the story of her misadventure in her latest book of Bears and Ballots with her trademark humor, wit, and compassion, a story that has lessons for us all. Let's talk with Heather Lende. So, to coin a phrase, Heather, you got spunk, honey. My goodness.
Well, thank you.
You are something else. This is so perfect for where we are right now politically. In fact, I was talking to your publicist and saying I want to explore this subject. She goes, "Do I have a book for you?" That's how I got to you. But let's start here. First of all, assume my audience knows nothing. Where'd all that spunk come from? Born where? Raised where? And how the hell did you land in Haines, Alaska?
I was born in Queens, raised on Long Island. I went to college in Vermont. I met my husband there. We got married pretty much right after I graduated. He had already been to forestry school and wanted to go where big trees were, so we bought a pickup truck and drove to Alaska and basically have been here ever since. So that's the story. And really my spunk, if there is any, has been forged living in the same small town all of my adult life. I got here when I was 24 and I'm 61 now. This has been the place where all my, as Neil Young sings, my changes have been.
Right. Living in Alaska, I know everybody wants to ask me that. It is the last frontier to us people down, particularly down here, South Florida. Oh my God! Yeah. From South Florida to Alaska, what's it like?
Well, it's in many ways it's like a throwback to another time, especially in the town I live in, Haines, which all of the stores, for instance, the grocery stores are locally owned. My husband owns a lumberyard and a hardware store. The kids all go to the same school, one school, K through 12, for 273 of them. People know each other. You don't lock your doors. We live very close to the land and the seasons, relying on salmon and gardens and berries and also hunting. And it's a nice life, I guess.
A certain breed of cat winds up there if they're not born there. Is that true? And I ask that because of where we're going to go with this conversation.
Yes, I think so. I mean, there's the people who've been here forever, the Alaska Native people who are still here and thriving and who have been for thousands of years. And then there's the whole series of newcomers that have come over the last couple hundred years, that in different waves and different types, but usually seeking something different, often idealistic, sometimes entrepreneurial, but so you get a real mix of people coming and going. It's in one way, it's like your quintessential American small town, but in other ways very different because everybody isn't related to each other and everybody doesn't have the same views on everything.
It's a real amalgamation, I suspect. So here's the deal. So you start writing. I love this. You're like the most gifted obituary writer in the history of the world. There is that.
I don't think so, but I try.
And you've written a whole lot of memoir type books. This is a little bit different where you went with this, but this is a different story for this aspect of your life as well. Now, things changed. Like you're going along, you're like, married mom, doing your thing. You got lots of hobbies. And 2016 comes along, which I think affected a lot of us, Heather.
It did. I mean, watching the debates, watching the way, Hillary Clinton was treated in some ways, but then I assumed, I guess, that I would be part of that group of women that were elected with their first woman president. We all know how that went. And so, right away it was sort of it wasn't going the way I had anticipated. Also, I'm a grandmother, and I had time, and I had a lot of deep roots in the community. I thought, this is my time to show my granddaughters that I want them to remember me for jumping in and being over at my house and watching, grandma try to figure out the latest crisis in the community and solve it. I was hoping to sort of be a hero, I suppose, and that's not how it turned out.
Well, in some ways it did turn out that way, but from my perspective. But here's the deal. First of all, were you always interested in politics?
Yeah, I think I'm somebody, I read the papers. I pay attention. I mean, from when I was a little kid in New York, even, I used to go to sleep at night listening to, I don't know if you remember this, if anybody was from there, but WINS,
of
news
course.
radio, 20 minutes, will give you the world. I used to lie in bed and listen to that.
Me too.
And then when I first came to Haines, I ended up volunteering at our local community radio station, which is a public station, and started doing got to do the morning news show and rip and read the AP Wire, if people remember that, when it was on paper. And I just used to love that. So, yes, I've always paid attention. I love reading books about, memoirs about, the Manchester books about Winston Churchill, or the David McCullough books, about Theodore Roosevelt and Harry Truman, John Adams. I love that stuff. So I suppose I've had it in my head a long time that maybe I could participate in it.
So, when most Americans these days think of Alaska politics, they think Sarah Palin.
Yes, unfortunately.
That is not you, my friend.
No, and I think also, really, in many ways, I think her trajectory was to blame for what happened with our national politics. That whole idea that, like, you could just say whatever you wanted and it could be kind of outrageous and semi-true or not, I can see Russia from here or whatever, and just plow ahead on personality and maybe style more than actual substance. Absolutely. And I think that paved the way for what's happened to some degree.
Let me veer off course for 1 second, because you just said that and it just comes to mind that the people who were trying to get a Biden elected the most are the people who created Sarah Palin. So I think that's their mea culpa. Right?
Maybe. I don't know. I just remember it was interesting. I coached the local cross-country running team for a lot of years. I don't know if you have time for the story.
Oh,
but
yeah.
What happened was, and I wrote a column for the Anchorage Daily News. And so I had some things going on that people kind of, if they were Googling Alaska or whatever, after the announcement that John McCain had chosen Sarah Palin, my phone would ring, and there I was in a van with a bunch of high school kids getting ready to get on the ferry to go to Sitka when this happened early in the morning. And by the time we got to Sitka, there was all these calls, and I remember I was one of the news outlets. I think it might have even been the Washington Post, and they said, we need a comment here. And I said, I don't know what he's thinking. I mean, this isn't crazy. And then they didn't take that because that wasn't what they wanted to hear, I guess. Because I was like, everybody on the ferry was just like, what? No, this has to be a joke. They have to be kidding. And it was like, no. And we were all just sort of stunned. And right or left. I mean, it didn't really matter. At that point, the politics weren't nearly as polarized. Right. But we just knew her and we're like, wait, she's not qualified. We have other really smart women in Alaska. If he wants an Alaska politician, we can find him one, But that wouldn't have been our first choice.
It's a fascinating thing. I'm thinking long term, it may work out for the best because I think we've learned some lessons from all of this. We're in the midst of the lesson now. I'm going to be the ultimate optimist and say, out of horror comes something good, perhaps. Mm-hmm. And then there's you. So you decide. There's the old saying, politics is all politics is local. I think it was. I was trying to think. Was it Tip O'Neill who said that first? I think. Yeah,
he did.
Who said that first?
That's my understanding that Tip O'Neill.
Right.
Said
Okay.
That,
and that's true. I think that's definitely true. I'm asking you. Do you agree that it's true?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's why it was difficult to necessarily define, all the right and left and ballots and bears, because it doesn't necessarily fall into the same stereotypes that you might have nationally. And that the issues that we got involved with or that divided the community were very local things, and that was why initially I didn't even think, even though I do tend to write about my life and stories from Haines and all that, I thought when I got on the assembly, well, there isn't going to really be a book here because it's just local government in a very small town in Alaska. But there was so much drama in it and so many things that seemed to be relevant to the current situation in our country and the world that it worked. I was like, well, maybe there is something here. And I had a friend, my editor, that was saying, Heather, you're going to write another book. I'm like, well, there's nothing really I can do. I'm deep in all this assembly. You wouldn't believe what happened last night and you wouldn't believe what's happening tomorrow. And she'd say, write about it. And so, well, nobody wants to read that. She said, no, they will. And so I just started journaling about it. And eventually it formed a book.
See, it's very interesting to me because politics has changed. We're about the same age in our lifetime. More than I think maybe before. Local politics has become almost obscure on mainland United States, partly because the newspapers aren't here anymore. You're not getting your news from newspapers that cover local stories. You're getting your news from online where it's all national. I think that's a problem. Or you have enclaves like Florida in which there's not even a town anymore. Everybody's living behind walls with HOAs, homeowners associations. That's your local politics today?
Yeah, and I think that's where, again, Haines we're really fortunate in that we have a weekly paper that's long established. We also have a weekly, a radio station that reports daily. I mean, the beat is essentially the borough assembly, the school board. That's the hard news. And there's very little time for feature reporting, the so-called soft news, because there's so much going on in local government. So we get daily newscasts and a weekly paper that goes into in depth on it, and reporters cover committee meetings, they cover assembly meetings, they cover the police issues, they cover, landfill, sewer and water, all of that. And people in Haines know who's on the assembly, who the mayor is, and very often are well versed in what's coming up at any given meeting and send in emails or call in or show up.
Bears and ballots. Okay, so you decide to run, and
yes,
you get elected. Bears,
a miracle.
I don't think so. Bears is in the family Ursidae that contains the genus Ursus, or the human kind of bear. I mean, I'm looking at this town. Talk to me where you were.
Both. Our town is full of real bears. Brown bears, or what you would call grizzly bears, but the Alaska brown bears are the what we call those type of bears. We also have to a lesser degree, there's black bears in Haines. But last night I was up at 1 a.m. The dogs are barking, and I looked out the window, and there's a big brown bear going kind of through the backyard, and I live right on the Chilkat River, and it was interesting because I'd never seen this before. The bear, instead of coming up toward my garden or my chickens, went in the river and swam by the house about 10 feet off the shore, right by. And, of course, it was light enough at 1 a.m. for us to see him. And that was interesting, but a little bit of both. But I think probably for me, it was more of the metaphorical bears. Every time I turned around, there was another big bear yelling at me.
So there's about 1,700 people in the borough. That includes.
It's about 2,500 in the entire Haines borough, which is the size. A borough is like a county here, and it's about the size of Rhode Island. The populated area in kind of the town is about 1,700, and then a little around the edges makes it the 2,500 if everyone is home at the same time, which I don't think that's ever happened. We have 800 households here.
Okay, so you've been living there forever. Everybody knows you. So campaigning?
Yes. Well, it's interesting again, and this is that you talked about local media, the campaign is really run through the local media. So the radio will host a forum, the newspaper hosts a forum, and then the Chamber of Commerce, and then also a community that's out the road, as we call it, 26 miles out of town. There's a little area called Mosquito Lake, and they have issues that are different than the town particularly. So they also host a candidates forum. And then sometimes there's even one about the school issues, or a club like the Miners Association might also have candidates there. So you don't so much campaign, or I didn't anyway, as you're invited to these events and then you sit up there with everybody else and answer questions.
Hard to know 2,500 people, but you knew a lot of these people, at least to say hello.
Yes. Having written some 400 obituaries in Haines, I know them very well. And I know their family connections and who's related to who because of that. And also I've been part of their lives at really vulnerable times. So and I have 5 children who, all went through school here. And now I have 5 grandchildren that actually live in Haines. So there's a lot of connections.
So is it true that you never really know people until you start talking politics? I mean, even family, you sit around the table and suddenly people become something that you never seen before or rarely see out of their personalities. I don't know if you did you suspect going in what you were going to be up against with people, knowing politics, being interested in politics, certainly seeing the kind of schisms we see on the national stage, or were you shocked by some of the crap that went down?
I was shocked by some of it, I think. And even though I had served, I actually got my feet wet a little serving on the Planning Commission for 3 years before that. And they do all the planning and zoning and, help with variances and things like that. So I thought I kind of knew what was going on and that it would be okay. But I was really shocked, I think, I think for lack of a better word, it really felt like I was bullied at first. And I had to learn how to get past that. And also, the things that people said. I mean, there's one story when I was asking what I thought was a completely legitimate question about a harbor breakwater and extending a sewer line that was going to go out further into the bay if that would be would involve harming any of our fisheries, our crabs and salmon, and if it would be polluting. And one of the people on the harbor committee said that it would be just fine because he catches the biggest, juiciest crabs in front of the sewer outfall and he saves them for all of his Democratic friends. And he looked right at me and I was like, did he really just say that? And everybody kind of, all the good old boys in the front row, they all sort of chuckled. And that's when I chose, all the way through this, I kept choosing the higher road or trying to. And so I didn't respond in a way that my family joked afterwards, like, you didn't tell him that you're allergic to crab? And I said, no, I didn't. Because I just left it like, you don't want to engage in that, I just sort of looked. And I remember looking at a friend of mine who was also sitting in the audience, like she raised her eyebrow. I was like, Heather, are you going to say something back? And I was like, I just sort of let it sit there, because I think what a lot of these people who really are often so difficult are trying to do is just get in a fight with you. And if you don't fight back, if you just keep plodding ahead and doing the best you can for your community, it kind of throws them off.
So it gets to a crisis point where they actually tried to recall you and I think 2 others. Tell us about that.
Well, that was right away. Essentially, our first vote was about a harbor reconstruction project, and the 2 people who were elected to the assembly, there were 6 running. There was 3 very conservative, including the current deputy mayor who wasn't elected. And then there was 3 of us that were more progressive. And the 2 of us that won were myself and the editor of the Chilkat Valley News, my friend Tom Morford. And right from the get-go, we ran on one of the things that we had spoken of regularly was that we wanted a referendum on this harbor project, a vote, since we were spending $30 million to make sure everybody liked the design that had been chosen, that had been controversial. And as soon as we tried to do that, there was this huge outcry, and it became just like what you see nationally. It wasn't a question of a better harbor design. It became, you don't like fishermen, you don't like the harbor, you don't like progress, like you were for them or against them, all or nothing. You couldn't, there was no nuance, there was no, whoa, let's talk about this. And that we didn't get the vote on the harbor project. And then really the next morning after that, which was, I think, my third day on the assembly, the supporters of the harbor threatened to start a recall. They had to wait, I believe, by state law, 120 days. So they just grumbled and organized and threatened that every single meeting until then, and then started passing around a petition, which basically they pulled in another assembly member who was an artist and figured they might as well get him too. And so they tried to get three of us off.
So let me take it to here, because this is a great story on so many levels, but it points something out that I think that we in our very few minutes we have left, I want to talk to you about, and that's this. I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg. Issues and schisms we see on the national level are just as deep on the local level. There's that aspect of it, but it becomes personal now. It didn't become personal that we were aware of in the past, and now, on the local level, on the national level, when you don't like what you're getting, it becomes personal. You attack the person, who they are, not what they think.
Exactly. The whole separation of issues and values, and it's all gotten very confused. And I think, I think the biggest thing is, and this happened locally and it's happening everywhere, is that, there's this, everybody's blaming everyone for ruining whatever it was they thought they had. And then you have this whole shroud of partial or mis or disinformation that just keeps us all riled up and confused. And really, I think everybody on all sides just wants, some justice and some fair play, and to be able to trust our leaders. And we just don't have that now. We can't even trust the information that's coming at us on every level, from the pandemic to, your water bill. Is this actually right, or is someone taking something off the top here?
Right.
Just don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I guess the reason I bring that up, I do this all day long, talk politics. I'm of the conclusion that there's a deep psychological problem going on in this country. A whole generation psychologically messed up. And the way that we deal with each other is just not effective. Now, I don't know if that goes on to the next generation or the next generation. If it's that built in, maybe it's something that's being taught in schools or not. I don't know. But it is psychological at this point, in my opinion. I understand the issues are different, but, the issues change. You look at the Republicans, remember, just 4 years ago, they were all for, the budget. Oh, protect that budget. They're the big spenders now. So I think the issues are the malleable to what you need to be at that particular moment. But there's something going on with the people in this country that I don't want to put it all on the politicians. I guess that's my point.
No, and I think that's true. I mean, it's so interesting to me here in Alaska, where you have all these very, proud individuals do their own thing, whatever, and that yet they say, well, we're waiting for the government to tell us what to do about the pandemic, when usually nobody would wait for the government to tell them to do anything. They would just announce, this is what we're going to do, right, because that's the way we do it. And so it's interesting. You'd think that people would know to do the right thing. Like Dr. Fauci said, what was that quote that was circulating around, something to the effect of, I don't know how to explain to you to care for your neighbors. I don't know how to explain to you.
It's not just about you, it's about the community. Yeah, right.
That's what you're supposed to do. And if you don't understand that sort of fundamental golden rule, for how can I explain to you where I'm coming from on this? If you don't care for your neighbors and it's everyone for themselves, that's not how it works. And I think that's why, especially coming back to small town government and taking like Louis Brandeis said, that the most important political office in this country is that of an informed private citizen. Like, start paying attention, everybody, going to those meetings, writing. You don't have to run for office to do it. You can just start saying, why are we doing it this way? And what is going on? And it's interesting, like you talk about Florida. people do it all the time when they create these homeowners associations. I mean, those are little governments.
That was my point. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Why not look at the greater good for your whole area? You can't just keep building little walls around everything and separating it. We're all in this together, and we're only as good as the least among us. Really.
As somebody we both admire said, it takes a village.
It does, and it's and that's not a cliche. Every little decision that is made at a local level that you think is small, from a zoning decision to how you allocate your funds to police departments and libraries and after school programs or food programs, or even the roadblocks you put up for participatory government. Do you have to show up in person at 6:30 on a Tuesday night in a blizzard, or can you call in? Make it easier for people to participate instead of, it seems like it's more difficult. You have to put it on this form and you have to say it here. And if it's not in by then, you can't comment, and you get your 2.5 minutes and no more and whatever. And that puts people off.
So what did you learn from all of this? I'm not going to tell the end of the story, guys. I want you to pick up this book. It's so wonderful. We're going to send you at the end where to go to get more information on the purchasing of it. But it's just so well written.
I learned that obviously, maybe it was reinforced, that you have to have a sense of humor in dealing with people, that everything really comes down to relationships and doing your best to respect everyone in the room, even the people that you have a fierce disagreement, trying to find some common ground. I think civility is hugely important. Manners, for lack of a better word, doesn't mean you can't smile and vote the other way. It doesn't mean you can't even be like my friend Ernestine Hayes, who is a native Alaskan and the writer laureate of Alaska at the moment. And Ernestine, every time she finishes speaking, she sticks her hand up in the air and she says, "Smash the patriarchy." But she smiles when she says it. And when she does it, you want to stand up and cheer. She doesn't say it in a mean way, if that makes any sense.
Yes, absolutely.
But she still says it.
Right.
And I think that's important. And I think the other thing is, you got to have courage. And courage goes a long way. And if you just keep at it, I look at look at John Lewis,
Oh, right.
My little battles were like nothing. That this man, how many years in Congress and how many wonderful moments, but how many setbacks, and what must he have thought, in the last couple of years? It's just astounding that, it's people like that who stay in there and just keep fighting the good fight. And it's possible. Change is possible if you do that. Yes.
I said that Heather had spunk. I wasn't kidding. Heather, thanks so much. Wonderful book.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I've been speaking with Heather Lende. She has contributed essays and commentary to NPR, the New York Times, and National Geographic Traveler, and is a former contributing editor at Woman's Day. Her latest book is Of Bears and Ballots. For more information on Heather and her work, visit her website at heatherlende.com. Thank you for tuning in to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, a production of Resec LLC. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, and is available at hallicasserjayne.com and on all your favorite apps. Be sure to visit us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and follow me on Twitter at The Halli CJ Show. Until next time, this is Halli Casser-Jayne.